The psychotropic drug movement against black boys is the 21st century form of COINTELPRO. The same COINTELPRO that J. Edgar Hoover headed in the 60s, or going from the 20s to the 60s, because he started with the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey and didn't stop until he exterminated the Panther movement. But nonetheless, the drug movement comes out of that. It is a movement of social control to prevent the rise of another black messiah. In fact, back in the 1980s, there was a movement called the Federal Anti-Violence Initiative. If you remember, back in the 80s, there was a lot of attention being given to the allegation that black males had a gene that predisposed us to be violent. In other words, we wasn't violent because of racism. We wasn't violent because of miseducation. We weren't violent because of economic castration. We weren't violent because our fathers was being locked up and killed and taken from us. We was violent because we was born with a gene that made us this way. So because of the outcry from the black community, that movement went underground. It came back as attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. It came back as conduct disorder. It came back as oppositional defiant disorder. It came back as disruptive behavior disorder. Partly pushed by the federal government, partly pushed by the American Psychiatric and Psychological Association, and partly pushed by the drug companies. One thing we have to understand about these so-called disruptive behavior disorders, they are all social creations. There's nothing scientific about ADHD. There's nothing scientific about conduct disorder. These are diseases that our children are diagnosed with when they don't freely accept white supremacy. See, if I can't sit still because the information you've given me, I know is not what my spirit needs, I'm ADHD. If I don't allow you to disrespect me and belittle me in your classroom, I have a conduct disorder. If I refuse to sit still and hear negative information about myself and my ancestors, I have oppositional defiant disorder. These disorders are the outgrowth of a defunct educational system. And the drug companies are making $40 billion a year off of doping black boys with drugs that kill their brain cells, mess with heart function, mess with their kidneys, mess with their liver, and, Brother Dawa, most of these drugs also affect the development of healthy semen in the boy's testicles. So if you're giving a black boy Ritalin or Adderall or Cyclert or Prozac or Depakote or Paxil or any of the other ones from age of 3 or age of 5 to the age of 21, when he's ready to get married and have children, many of them won't be able to have children because the drug erodes their ability to father a child. It all goes back to eugenics. In fact, Ritalin, according to the Drug Enforcement Agency of America, is a Schedule II drug. You know what that means? No. It's just as addictive as crack cocaine. The DEA has Ritalin. Anybody who don't believe me, do your own research. The DEA classifies Ritalin as Schedule II, as addictive as crack. In fact, Ritalin is pharmacologically equivalent to speed. The illegal drugs speed and Ritalin have the same chemical structure. Some drugs are legal, some drugs are illegal, but they're all being used to decimate the community. Damn. Two things. Number one, we already have light skin supremacy in the black community. Light skin supremacy is the rule of order for blacks. In other words, white supremacy, which is the parent of light skin supremacy, dictates that those who are of lighter hue must rule those who are of darker hue. That doesn't mean that if you're light skinned, you're a light skin supremacist. It just means that many of our light skinned brothers and sisters, not most or all, but many, do believe in light skin supremacy. And if you ascribe to light skin supremacy, you also believe in white supremacy, because that is where the foundational ideology comes from. So if I'm a light skin supremacist and I believe myself to be better than a brother who's darker, I must also, by default, believe that the white man is better than me. But along with light skin supremacy, there is a homosexual supremacy that's coming into the black community now. In fact, over the next 10 to 20 years, most black men in public office, most black men who are instructors on the collegiate level, most black men of influence and so-called power will be homosexual. The sister said it best, that the white man does not fear an effeminate black man.
Hold on. Say that again.
Yes, indeed. You're going to see the rule of homosexual supremacy in the black community. In other words, any black man of substance over the next 10 to 20 years must by necessity be a homosexual. If he's not, he will not be allowed to ascend within the power structure.
Damn.
Because the white man does not fear effeminate or homosexual black men. Because, and for all intents and purposes, the homosexual and effeminate black man is the white man's bitch, excuse my French.
No, go ahead.
And so we have to understand that. And that also means that when we raise our boys, we got to raise them as men. And one thing we have to understand, the reason why black women are mistreating the boys is because they are displacing the anger and rage and frustration that they have for the father onto the boy. And so what happens is he becomes, okay, the object of ridicule. She doesn't even know she's doing it unconsciously. But when she looks at him, all she sees is the father who did her wrong. And unfortunately, by mistreating her son, guess what? She keeps the cycle. It perpetuates. Because now he begins to scorn black women by the way his mother treated him.
Right.
So the cycle continues. See, the problem with the black community is that we continue the same failing cycles. Every time a new African baby is born, we have a chance to rewrite history. Every time a baby comes out. The problem is we don't raise the baby no differently than we was raised. So if I'm on drugs, now my son on drugs, my grandson on drugs. I'm a homosexual, my son's a homosexual, my great-grandson's a homosexual. Because it takes a lot of willpower and spiritual inclination to change what was done to us. And one of the reasons why black people continue to suffer the same sickness that we've been suffering since the end of slavery is because we are so interested in changing our environment, but we refuse to change ourselves. Every black man and woman has within them a small white man and a small white woman inside of you. We all have it by virtue of the conditioning. And in order for us to become African again, we have to exercise the demon of the enemy. Until we take the white man out of us, we'll never be free. You can take you out of slavery, but if you don't take the slave out of your consciousness, you will always be one. And that's why no matter how often we fight, no matter how often we struggle, we end up with the same Malou. Because although we're fighting the outside, nobody's killing the white man inside.
Damn.
One thing we got to understand about white supremacy, the power comes from making it look like their rule is the natural order of things. Let me say that again. The strength of white supremacy is that they're able to make everybody believe that it is nature's order for them to rule. And as a result of that, they have convinced black people that it is natural for us not to rule. The reason why we have such a difficult time getting educated, finding jobs, holding jobs, is because we're trying to be successful in a system that is designed for your failure. You can't get water out of a rock, and you're not going to get black success out of white supremacy. Now, the contradiction in all of this is the fact that black people annually gross over $850 billion a year. We're the 10th richest group on the face of the earth. We don't own anything but the cash. We're the 10th richest group on the face of the earth. We are the richest black group on the globe. There is no group of blacks, black people in America, although we are only 40 million strong, gross more cash than any independent black nation on the face of the earth. The problem is we use all of our residual and disposable income to have fun, to keep my hair done, to get a nice car, to buy a bigger house, to wear nice clothes. We act like overgrown children who take their allowance and run to the candy store. And the reason why we do that is because slavery has taught us that we will forever be the children of white people, so we will allow our slave master to take care of the important decisions, and we will use our income to have fun. Churches get $3 billion every Sunday. $3 billion goes into the church tray every Sunday in America. With that type of money, you could be building 10 comprehensive high schools every month. 10 comprehensive high schools every month. There's no reason for a single black child in America to have to go to a defunct public school. There's no reason why black men don't have jobs. We have the economic ability to create an independent reality. Indians from India do it. Chinese do it. Even the Arabs do it. Every ethnic group in America, including Hispanics, have an independent reality except Negroes. Why? Because we are scared of white people and we hate ourselves. Until we deal with the self-hatred that exists within the black community, we'll never be whole. The reason why we don't have black businesses is because two black people coming together will not trust each other. Psychologically, unconsciously, I assume you're going to rip me off. You assume I'm going to rip you off. So the minute something goes wrong, as it always will in any business, we part company. You know why? Because we've been conditioned not to trust our brother.
Exactly.
African people are hated because historically you have succeeded the world in every area. Everyone knows who we are except ourselves. Every science, every discipline was created by African people. But not only that, Africa is the richest piece of land on the face of the earth. It is the only continent that can be totally self-subsistent without any outside help. So the reason you are hated is because everyone knows your potential because they know your history except you. And once we finally come into a knowledge of ourselves and go back to where God originally put us at, everybody else will naturally become subservient to African people. You are God's first people, and as a result of that, you are God's chosen people. And until you realize that, you will never be free. Brother Dawa and I want to invite everyone out this afternoon from 12 until 3. We have that busy signal. Should I continue to?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. From 12 until 3 this afternoon at Brother Marcus Klein School, the Freedom Home Academy, I'm going to be doing a free workshop for the African-American community on special ed law, discipline procedure, and other things that are important for you to know. That's this afternoon, right after the show, from 12 p.m. until 3 p.m. And I believe the Freedom Home Academy is located at 8100 South Dante.
Right,
D-A-N-T-E?
Right.
Okay, so please come on out. Children are welcome. Again, Freedom Home Academy. Today, 12 to 3, no cost. Please come on out. But sister, one thing we got to understand, and I totally agree with your comments, whenever you want to control a people, there's 3 institutions that are absolutely necessary to control and dominate any people. Number 1, you must control the school. Number 2, you must control the church. And number 3, you must control the military. Those are the 3 most important institutions in any community. So when you look at the black community, obviously, we don't have our own community police force. So that's totally controlled by Europeans. Then when you look at the church, that's also totally controlled by Europeans. We tend to look at the mosque and look at the church and say that these are black institutions. No, they're not. The process, the mindset, the ideology is totally European. We don't have an African-centered form of Islam, and we don't have an African-centered form of Christianity. We got European and Arab forms of religion that are simply being managed by black personalities. Religion is the most political institution in the black community. It always has been. When slavery began, it was done through the church. When the missionaries came into Africa to subdue and colonize, they did it through the church. Whenever the enemy wants to get a stronghold in the black community, they call up the clergy. They call up the imams. They call up other religious leaders who they know will push forward their program. There is nothing non-religious about the church. The church and the mosque are totally religious. And in fact, one of the reasons why black people are being so successfully oppressed and subdued in this country is because many of the people who stand at the pulpit are afraid. They are afraid to do the work that they claim they were sent here by God to carry out.